Hey everybody, I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold here with our weekly lecture series. This lecture is about one of my rules, the Finegold rules, always repeat. And I want to thank our sponsor, Alex. Alex left a message that he wanted me to read. I've been a longtime fan and have followed the many Finegold rules. I'm sponsoring this lecture so I can have some examples to show my friends when I tell them to always repeat, but they don't understand why they should. Well, Alex, you're not alone. And if you'd like to sponsor a lecture like Alex is doing, then you can contact my wife, Karen. Her information is on the screen now. And sponsor a lecture on the topic of your choice. Alex isn't alone in trying to explain to people always repeat, and they're like, why? And this is something I've found virtually all grandmasters do whenever they get a chance, and some stronger players. And typically at the lower levels, at the club levels, we don't see this enough, or people don't think about it. And there's a lot of reasons to repeat. One is for time control considerations. If you're playing something like 40 and 90 followed by game and 30, by repeating you get closer to move 40. So that's good for your time management, because some people need help with their time management. The other reason is if you're playing with an increment, then you get those extra seconds added to your clock when you play with 10-second or 30-second increment. So repeating actually gives you more time. But the main reason to repeat is to establish psychological dominance over your opponent. Because at least half the time when you repeat the position once, the opponent thinks that you want to draw, and you're going to repeat again and claim a draw. And sometimes my opponents and other people in this situation have offered a draw, thinking they relax, the game's over, it's going to be a draw, when you have no interest in that. You're just establishing that you're in control of the game, and they're basically playing on your terms. And I was taught this by Grandmaster Gregory Kaidanov, who, in one of the games we're going to show today, I used it against his always repeat mantra. And it's, it's from the Soviet school of chess. All the top grandmasters in the world used to be from the Soviet Union, back in the 60s and 70s, with some exceptions. And we have another person. Welcome, Alex. Okay, let me continue. Let's see, we have a chat. Oh, that's okay. We haven't looked at any games yet. We've just talked about the rules and read your sponsor message and all that. So we're going to show some examples. And the first example was a game that I lost to a much stronger player. And this is somebody who definitely knows always repeat rule. It's Alexander Beliavsky. The pièce de résistance is going to be the last game I show, with several repetitions, without any threefold, of course. And if you're confused while you're repeating moves and you're not sure if the position is repeating for the third time, then don't do that. Don't make a mistake and get the same position 3 times and have your opponent claim a draw when you're trying to win. Okay, so this game, and probably about 25% of the lecture, we're going to talk about always repeat, and we talked about it already, and why you repeat, and what instance it makes sense, which is always. And the other part of the lecture, I'll be showing you some nice games where person who was repeating but forcing the issue, not allowing the opponent to repeat the third time, was successful. Okay, so I have white this game, but we're going to look at it from black's point of view because black is the one who was in control of this game. This is me, white, against Alexander Beliavsky. Again, a many-time candidate for the World Championship, top 10 player in the world, and has worked with a lot of the best players in the world also as a coach. It's actually a funny story about Beliavsky. The first time he was in St. Louis, at the St. Louis Chess Club, they were having the Sinkfield Cup, and he was MVL's coach, and he went to the front desk, and the front desk is like, "Can we help you? Who are you? Get out of here. Get out of here, old man." And he was like, "I'm working with one of the players. I'm Beliavsky," and they didn't know who Beliavsky was. So after that, they decided to train the staff at the club with which grandmasters were showing up and what they looked like, so people wouldn't confuse them for homeless people. Okay, so I have white. And again, this was played in 1999 Open Tournament in California. Queen C2 Nimzo. So far, just normal play. Black's about equal. I think I was supposed to play knight b5 here, but I took, which I think is a small mistake. But it's important that I took so we can get to the repeating at some point. Bishop takes, attacking the queen. Queen a4, a5, a3. And we see this repetition of moves also in the Catalan. And actually, this looks like a Catalan. So I'm a bit confused because 99% of the time when I look at my games, I'm looking at it from my point of view, usually not looking at it from the opponent's point of view. So it's weird that I'm looking at black here when I had white. Okay, so bishop c6 attacks my queen. Queen c2. Bishop e4 attacks my queen. Queen a4. And because I know about always repeat, since my mentor, Gregory Kaidanov, in the early 90s explained this to me, and this game was played in 99, I knew that he wasn't going to repeat and draw against me since he's a much higher rated, more famous player, stronger player. But he was just repeating because that's what you do. And then he played bishop c6 again. Now, if he plays bishop e4, I can claim a draw. But, of course, he didn't do that. He played bishop e7. So he repeated as much as he could, but not have the same position occur 3 times. And then retreated his bishop. The rest of the game was me getting outplayed and me playing sort of silly. But the end of the game is super brilliant. So when I prepared this lecture, I thought, okay, what games did I play where either I repeated or my opponent repeated and did well, and which one were really good games? Because I remember in most of my games, if there were repetitions to show, who the boss was, in this case it was him, and then what happened later. So we're not going to delve into what happened. I remember my rook somehow got to h4. I don't know why I put my rook on h4. Ugh. Why did I do that? Okay. And I also remember he doubled rooks on the 7th rank, which doesn't look possible here. Okay, I mean, black is much better because my rook is on h4. So white rook on h4 is terrible. Highlight it there in red. Terrible. So he's just playing on the queen side, and my rook is just sitting there doing nothing. He played some defense, stopped some sacrifices that don't work. Then he doubled rooks. I finally got my rook to make a threat. Amazing. Okay, so bishop takes d4 is a nice tactic. So the idea is if I take the bishop and he trades, he has knight h3 check, winning my rook. So I played h takes g6, sacrificing my queen. And he took my queen. And I played g7 check. If he doesn't want me to queen, he has to play king g8. And then I played knight f5. And I'm threatening knight takes queen, knight e7 check, followed by queen, and knight h6 check, followed by queen. So if it was white's move, white would be winning now. Okay. My opponent, Beliavsky, played knight e2 check. I played king h1. Again, I have all these threats. And he took my bishop. I took with the rook. Now, he played one of the more brilliant moves I've ever faced. If I take with the king, then several things win for black, but just to make it easy on the customers, he could check and then take my knight, and then I'm down a piece and a pawn, so can't do that. That's why I took with the rook on g2. Now he played one of the most brilliant moves I've ever faced. But it turns out he's winning here by putting one of his rooks to the back rank. Because then if I take his queen and he takes back, he's up a knight. And I'm not threatening to check and make a queen because his rook on the back rank would be defending. So he has more than one way to win. But he chose an amazingly brilliant way to win. And when I was asked to do this lecture, I thought, this game has an amazing move, and this game has a repetition. The guy who did the repetition and decided not to do the threefold, he's the one who won. Turned out it wasn't me, but I remember those things from the game. And he played a super brilliant move, knight g3 check, upon which I resigned. This is a really nice move. So, well, I can't let him take my knight, so I have to take the knight. Although I didn't take the knight, I resigned. So there's three ways to take the knight. If I take with the rook, he checks me and then takes my knight. So then I'm down a queen. That's not good. If he takes with the knight, or if I take with the knight, I don't have any threats. My knight was here threatening his queen, and knight check, and knight here. And now my knight is there threatening nothing, so he can just play rook takes f2, and he's up a queen. And if I take with a pawn, I'm blocking my rook. So I'm not threatening anything, because if my knight checks, it just takes my pawn. So So he can just take my rook. And then if I take his queen, he can checkmate me. Although what he should do, because of this lecture, is he shouldn't checkmate me. He should repeat rook here, and then mate me. And when I play blitz chess on my stream online, that is exactly what I do. If I have mate in one, but I can repeat and then play mate in one, always repeat. So that's what I would do. However, when I'm solving puzzles on chess.com, I don't do that because chess.com says that's the wrong answer. It wants me to play checkmate. Stupid chess.com, not doing puzzles based on my rules. Okay, now the next game features me doing my rules twice, which is always good. And it's against the guy who taught me the always repeat. And when the game ended, I was wondering if he would mention the repetitions, like, I thought you were going for a draw, or I thought you were going to repeat for the third time, but he never said any of that. He's the one who told me about the rules to always repeat, and then I always repeated, and he wasn't proud of his student because I won. So he didn't want to be on the losing side of always repeat. Okay, so we played a Queen's Gambit. And I prepared for this line specifically because he's played this before. The opening is just white being slightly better. Then he sort of sacrifices, blunders a pawn. Yeah, c5, he thought if I take on c5, he would win his pawn back. So he didn't intentionally give a pawn away. But, if he doesn't play c5, I mean, his bishop's really terrible. So, I mean, c5 isn't really that bad, even though it loses a pawn, because it opens up his bishop. Okay, I took. And now, if he plays queen d5, threatening mate, and then if I stop mate, he can win his pawn back, I just take his bishop, which stops mate, because his queen and bishop don't make a battery anymore, and I'm a pawn up. So he took on c5. I took back. And he played queen a5, attacking my pawn. There's a very complicated line that I think I remember, even though this game was played in 2011. This game was played 14 years ago, the U.S. Championship in St. Louis. But his intention was to play queen d5, threatening mate, threatening my knight, and threatening my c-pawn. And then he realized I have a very complicated way to play here. I can play c6, and if he takes on c6, then I can take the bishop with the knight, and then I have an amazing move, bishop h7 check, and then I take his queen, and if he takes my queen, which he should do, then I take his rook and whites up in exchange for nothing. And he didn't see c6 when he played c5, so that now he saw c6 and didn't like it. So he played queen a5. Okay, and I played c6, and I'm a pawn ahead. Okay, so he played bishop a8, and I defended my knight with f4. And basically, if black never wins this pawn back, then I'm winning because I have a passed pawn in the 6th rank and I'll pawn up. He played rook c7, blocking my pawn. He could take on a2 if he's really insistent on winning his pawn back. That's probably what I would do, just so I'm not down a pawn. But he decided to try to win my pawn by doubling rooks. Rook f2. Okay, and now we get to the first repetition. He played knight c3. And you can see my rook is attacked because he blocked my rook. So I played only move that makes any sense. Rook back to c4. His knight went to d5. And I played rook c5 again. And he played knight c3. And I played rook c4. So psychologically, he's probably thinking, maybe Ben wants a draw, although he taught me always repeat. So, and this position hasn't repeated for the third time, because if we go back, my rook was on c2. It didn't start on c4. So this is the first time my rook's on c4. And this is the second time my rook's on c4. Now if I play rook c5, he can claim a draw, or I could claim a draw now and write the move rook c5 on my score sheet, as long as I don't make it. You can't make a move and then claim a draw, but you can write the move down and tell the arbiter you're going to play rook c5 and claim a draw. But I had no interest in drawing. I was just repeating because always repeat. And the reason I played rook c5, because my pawn's hanging, and rook c5 blocks his queen. So I played king f2, defending my pawn. Like knight e7, he's trying to attack my c pawn as much as possible. Now we have another repetition. Queen h5, threatening f7. Then he defends f7 by moving his knight out of the way. Then back to f3, then back to e7, then back to h5, back to d5. And again, I could write queen f3 on the score sheet here and claim a draw, or I could play queen f3 and he could claim a draw. But I wasn't interested in that, and he knew I wasn't interested in that, but he's the one who told me always repeat, so I always repeated. And he's the one that has to repeat, because I'm the one with the extra pass c pawn on the 6th rank. Now again, he's threatening my e pawn, so that's why I'm playing queen f3, because my pawn's attacked. So I play queen e2, so as not to repeat. And the rest of the game isn't super interesting, but eventually, with my extra pawn, I was able to win. He never won my c6 pawn. He tried. Now he plays rook c5, attacking my queen, but his queen and rook are overworked. His rook is defending his queen, his rook is stopping me from queening, and his queen is defending his rook and his e-pawn. That's too much defending. So I played queen takes e6 check, and he resigned. If he trades queens, now his rook is attacked. And then if he trades rooks, I'm threatening to promote to a queen, so he can't take my knight. And then I'm up 2 pawns, and my passed pawn, the 7th rank, is going to win the game eventually. So he resigned instead of being in this lost endgame. So in that game, against the guy who taught me always repeat, I always repeated twice, and then I didn't the third time, and eventually I won the game. And I've been playing Gregory Kaidanov, Grandmaster from Kentucky, for about 30 years. And that's the only game I've ever beaten him. But I had to do a lot of repeating to beat him.
After you played Queen E2, is there any reason he didn't play Knight E7 again?
Now we have to go back. Okay. After 97, I'm guessing I would play bishop e4. But it's a guess. He definitely could have played 97, but the engine always said I was winning. It says he can't win the pawn back. If necessary, I can play queen c2 or queen f3 again and defend my pawn if I need to defend it more. But also, I think he wanted to keep this here so my queen has to defend my e3 pawn. But yeah, knight e7 isn't worse than rook e7, what he did. What he did wasn't really that good, but his position's already quite bad here. I think the difference is with my queen on f3, if I play bishop e4, which I would play with my queen on e2, then he could play rook d2 check. Okay. But with my queen on e2, then I don't care about that. So I guess that's the reason why knight e7 doesn't do as much as it did before. Before I couldn't play bishop e4. A good question, though.
Thanks.
What did I do wrong? Oh, I didn't push no. Okay. I wanted to show this game at the end, so I'm going to skip this game. And, whoa. It's weird. It went to the end of the thing. It messed up. That was the last game. Okay. So this game was played in the U.S. Chess League in 2012. And I'm playing Zhanibek Amanov. He's one of the two Amanovs. This Amanov is an IM. There's a Mezgin Amanov, also played in the U.S. at that time, who was a GM. I won't show you my game with him because there was no repetition and I lost. But this game, there was a repetition. So we'll look at the game pretty quickly because it's not interesting until the end. Then it's really interesting. So basically, it was very positional, very strategical, and some would say boring. I didn't think it was boring when I was playing it. But if you're watching the game, you might think it's boring. Because nothing much happens this game. I like the bishop d8 to b6 maneuver. So I like doing that. f4 is pretty aggressive. See, this isn't in my Never Play F6 lecture series. So otherwise, I have to not show this game. So I have a nice blockade in the center. Nice knight on c5. Yeah, here I start repeating with my rook. This is actually sort of funny. Okay, so in this position, it's black's turn to move. Then I played here. He went here. I played here, played back, and I went back. And this is the position I told you it was black's turn to move, but now it's white's turn to move. So technically, that's not a repetition of the position because it's a different person to move. But I was trying to put my opponent in Zugzwang because queen is defending b2 and his queen is defending e4, that's, you can play queen c2, but he doesn't have a lot of moves to make. Can't move his knight. Queen doesn't have a lot of moves. He played rook f2, defending his b pawn some more. Okay, and then I sacrificed a piece with the move knight d4, which was my intention. He took the piece. So white's a piece ahead. But I have this passed h-pawn that's pretty strong. So one idea that white has is to perpetual check me from behind. So he played queen f7, wants to check me on f8. I checked and played h2. Check. He only has one check. And now always repeat. Now if I play king h5, he can claim a draw by writing down queen h8 on his score sheet. But I played king f4, which I was always intending to do, but I wanted to repeat first because always repeat. So probably his heart sunk because, you know, this pawn's pretty strong. So he probably was hoping I would repeat for a draw. Okay, he checked. I came in here. Now I'm threatening all kinds of checkmates. Check. And knight f2. If you're watching on YouTube after the fact, which 99.9% of you are, this is a very nice black to play and win. So I repeated moves. I got my king to safety. My pawn's about to promote. But I have a really nice win here. Now, if you remember, my king was on e3, and he checked me and went away. And I can't repeat now and go back to e3, back to d1, which I would do if I could, because he can play knight g4 check and then take my h-pawn. And I think the engine says that's a draw, because all my pawns are hanging. But I played queen, sacrificing my queen. And when he takes, I don't take his knight with check, which everybody thought I would do. This was a team tournament, and on a different floor in the same building, they were analyzing the game for like the spectators. I was upstairs, and they were downstairs. And they were analyzing queen takes, and they thought it was probably a draw. But I just distracted his knight to h1, so now I go back to e3. Always repeat. Put my king back on e3. Now I'm threatening all kinds of checkmates, and white doesn't have any good checks. So I'm threatening checkmate, checkmate, and checkmate. And there's nothing you can do about it. So in this position, he resigned. If he plays knight g3, which stops all the checkmates I told you about, now I have another checkmate. I can go to f2 or d2, either one, and then the other one. Or I could go to d2 and then go to f2. So after king e3, he resigned. So I thought it was cool that my king got to repeat, and then I came here and my king got to go back to e3, and checkmate was inevitable. And we won that match. I think we won that match anyway, but okay. Now, in my opinion, and it's an opinion, you'd have to analyze millions of Grandmaster games to prove me wrong. I would say about 1 out of 12 Grandmaster games has a repetition where somebody is establishing dominance and they're repeating the position once. And so I decided to have a look at the Ding Gukesh match, which finished a couple of months ago. and find examples of repeating, but no draw. And there was at least one, but this is one that I remembered. This was a very strange game with Ding White against Gukesh. This might have been their strangest game of the match. Pawn structure didn't make any sense. F4 and C4 with the center pawns. Rook's on E4. It's like my rook on H4 against Beliavsky. Okay, so black is better. Black's up a pawn. That turns out to be the wrong knight. It turns out if he plays the other knight, the engine says he's close to winning. Now white's better. White's up in exchange. Black has two passed pawns. So this is funny because this happened more than one time in the match. The engine would say Ding is better and Gukesh will be playing for the win and Ding was playing for the draw, which is weird because these are two of the best players in the world. So if the engine says one side's better, usually players would have some idea of that and they would play accordingly. But in this match, Gukesh just always played for the win, and it seemed like Ding was always trying to make the game a draw when it was complicated. Okay, so in this position, black played queen g2, threatening knight f3 check. And you could argue he's also threatening to take all these pawns. But knight f3 check is the real threat. Queen f2, stopping all threats. Queen d5. Queen d4. Queen g2. Queen f2. Always repeat. And in this position, black could play queen g2 and claim a draw. Or white could claim a draw. Or black could write down the move queen g2 and claim a draw. And instead, black played queen a2 because Gukesh is establishing dominance. He repeats, Ding lets him have a draw, even though the engine says white's better, and Gukesh doesn't want a draw. He's playing for a win. And, well, it's hard to tell who's better here. White's up in exchange, but black has two connected passed pawns. White's king is a little open. So the players probably thought it was complicated. Ding didn't mind a draw. Gukesh could have drawn, but he decided to play for a win. Now the engine likes white. And he got one of those passed pawns. But the game petered out. And then he wins his exchange back. And they agree to a draw because king takes knight is obviously a draw. So even in the World Championship, the players repeat, then they don't repeat. And then in this instance, the engine didn't agree with which player was playing for the win. It thought Ding should play for the win, and Gukesh decided he would play for the win. So Ding established dominance. That's why he won the match. Okay, now the pièce de résistance. And I show this game a lot, but I usually don't show all the repetitions. But this had more repetitions than any game ever played. Not really, but you get the idea. This is my game with Fidel Corrales from 2013 St. Louis Open. It's a game that I've shown a lot, and I feel it's probably my best game ever. But it definitely has the most repetitions. And normally, when I show the game, I don't show all the repetitions because it doesn't really add to the game. But in this lecture, you're going to see a lot of repetitions. So another queen c2 Nimzo Indian, like against Beliavsky. Except this game I didn't lose. And again, this position wasn't very exciting at the beginning. Now, he was worried I'd play knight b5, so he played a6. This bishop is overworked. It's defending two things, so I took one of them. If he takes with the bishop, then I take his pawn. So he took with the g-pawn. Now I'm attacking the pawn again. He attacked my queen and my knight. So queen b1. Then he decided to win a pawn, giving up his nice bishop. And now he made the losing move. Although the engine says I'm like plus 1.4 here. Played knight b4. And now I sacrifice. And you can already see repetition is coming if I want it. Queen g6 and check and so forth. And during the game, I was repeating when I could because he was playing much faster than me, so I didn't want to get into time trouble. So I repeated. Then I repeated again. Then I sacked my bishop. Then I repeated again. And usually I don't show the repetitions when I'm showing the game because people don't care about that. They want to see me checkmate them. Now I'm threatening rook h4 mate. Then I repeat again. And each time I repeat, in the back of his mind, he must be thinking, okay, Ben's going to take a draw because I'm up 2 pieces. Maybe this game does have the most repetitions. Rook f3, threatening rook h3 mate. And now in this position, queen and bishop defend h4. So if rook h3 check, he can play bishop h4. But they also defend d6. So I sack on d6. If he takes with the bishop or the queen, then rook h3 is going to be mate. So he played bishop h4. I think I didn't repeat here because I was calculating to mate. And also I didn't need to repeat because I already made move 40. And here he resigned. If he plays king here, I can mate like this, which I was not going to do. Or I can mate the way I was going to do, which is here. Setting up for the next game. So he resigned here. But I repeated the position as many times as I could without repeating for a third time. Then he knows I can draw whenever I want, but I don't want to draw. I'm just repeating and establishing dominance of the position and of the game. And that was one of my best games, and it had my most repetitions for me. So psychologically, repeating is good because often your opponent will offer you a draw or think that you're repeating 3 times for a draw when you're not doing that. And then they're psychologically crushed when you keep playing on and don't repeat. Also, it gains time on the clock. It gets you closer to move 40 if you're playing 40 moves in 90 minutes or 120 minutes or something. And it makes you feel better about the position knowing that you're in control. You can draw whenever you want, and you're the one playing for the win. So always repeat. All the grandmasters do it. You guys should do it too. I want to thank our sponsor again, Alex. If you want to sponsor a lecture, contact Karen. Thanks for watching our weekly lectures. I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold, and I'll see you guys next time with more weekly lectures. Bye, everybody.